Okay. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Is anyone wearing any of the language headsets at all? No? Okay, cool. So I hope you can all hear me properly. My name is Matt. I'm from Google. I'm from London, so this is tropical weather for me. This is like the hottest place on earth right now. I'm from a team called the News Lab at Google. I'll explain a bit more about that in a moment, but just first a bit about me, if you don't mind, and then also about Google here at the Perugia event. So I've been at Google for about 3 years. Before that, I was a reporter and producer at BBC News for just over 8 years, mainly based in London. So I can sort of relate to what it's like to be a journalist. Wasn't too long ago. And then 3 years ago, I moved to Google, where I've been working with publishers and journalists across the UK and Ireland for the last 3 years. But today I'm here to talk to you about advanced search and Google Trends. It's gone away from, there's meant to be a graphic there, but hey, let's see if we can get it back. But I'm actually doing 3 events over the next couple of days. There we go, hurrah. One, looking at search, which is today. Tomorrow morning, we're looking at YouTube for news. And then finally on Friday, there's going to be a bit of a deep dive on Google Maps. So if you're around, then do come and say hello to all those sessions. So this is a bit about me, my Twitter handle, come say hello. But more importantly, underneath we have a web address, google.com/mediatools, and that mediatools@google.com email address. The first is a really, really useful website. If I sort of bore you, or you fall asleep halfway through because it's a bit hot in here, then one thing to take away is that web address. It's really useful. It goes through all of the Google suite of tools and gives you really good examples of how you could be using some of the tools and services. If you're a journalist and you're producing content using some of Google's tools, like Google Maps, for example, and if you're running into a problem with some of the technology, then the mediatools@google.com email address is a really good place to go. It's not the place to go if you've got a breaking news story, or if you're on a really tight deadline, but pretty much within a day or so, you should get a response back from someone at Google who can give you some advice on how to fix that map or how to fix that issue you're having on your channel. So they're 2 really good places to go. As I said, I'm from the News Lab, and what the News Lab is a group of people at Google who either like me have been a journalist before or have journalism as their passion. They've studied it or they have a really strong interest in that area. We've been working with organizations like the European Journalism Centre, like The Guardian, and like many other titles around the world to see how we can support journalists to sharpen up your digital skills if you want to, and also to talk about the future of news and talk about any innovations or ideas that you as journalists come up with. So, as I said, today we're going to be looking at advanced search. This is the breakdown of what we're doing. So it's advanced search, which is, everyone knows what Google search is, hopefully. If not, then you might be in the wrong room. Image search, if you're doing a lot of online stuff, perhaps. Public data is a tool I'm going to go through, which a lot of people don't know. I didn't know much about it when I was a journalist. And finally, Google Trends, which is something that we're really looking at. And I think there's a really interesting area there that could be something to explore. But if you are a journalist and you've been to one of these events before, or an event like this, then you may have seen this format before. Someone at the front with a nice clicker, which is new, by the way, talking about tools and products that you could or should use. What I thought we'd do today is try something a bit different. It may not work, so if you don't see it again, then it hasn't worked. But it's to give you an idea at the top of our presentation about a story. So I've picked one which is universal, wherever you're from, particularly if you're from the UK, you've heard of this story before. This is a real story. It's from Sky News a few years ago. It's about bad weather, as I said, very familiar, regular story, bread and butter if you're a journalist in the UK. This is the article, and I want all the way through the presentation for you to think about this story. And you're a journalist or an editor or a producer or a picture editor on this day, and you have to deliver something using some of these tools. So here's the copy. Heavy rain and gale-force winds have caused widespread chaos across parts of the country and northern Europe. Hundreds of homes in Britain are underwater or without electricity, and thousands of people have been evacuated and schools closed. Pretty powerful stuff. And then when you get to the UGC comment there, we have a power cut in the pub last night, warm beer. So you know it's a big story. But here you can tell it's a picture-rich story. It's a story that could happen in any country around the world, unfortunately, and one that often comes across in news galleries and news diaries. So how can we use this story and some of the tools? Let's go through the tools we're looking at today again. Let's start with search. So this is a bit of a quiz. Who can tell me what year this is? The year when President Clinton was in power, a big year for him. We were getting ready for the Euro, and the cultural legends that are the Spice Girls were #1 in some countries around the world. Any guesses, anyone? 97? 99? I feel like a bingo caller. It was, of course, 1998, and the year that Google started, nearly. You could have won a Daewoo. This was the first look of Google back in 1998. 10 blue links on the site. You had an exclamation mark on the logo, which we don't have anymore. And you can see a particular font, fairly basic. And that is only back in 1998. This is probably what people who are using Google were using. This looks like a small car. But again, fairly early days. Who can remember using Google back in these days? A couple of, like, maybe a third of the room. These are some of the handsets we were using them on, from left to right, going more modern. So on the left-hand side, back in the 90s, you would text Google a question, and it may text you the answer back. Going forward, the handsets get smaller, then get bigger again, and now we're kind of all the way over here, where the handsets are like the size of a TV screen, but actually you can do much more with them. So search over the years since 98 has definitely changed. And Google has changed as well. So this is the founding sort of mission of Google as Larry Page sees it. So the perfect search engine should understand exactly what you mean and give you back exactly what you want. What does that mean? If you go into Google now and type in Perugia, this is what you'll find. So you'll see, remember those basic links. Now on the right-hand side you have what's called a knowledge card or a knowledge graph. Here you have a picture of Perugia, a map of Perugia, and some local detail pulled from various sources. Now we're going to go into search and some of the other little tools that you can see. So let's go through them one by one. This is if you're looking for the spelling of a word, or you want to know how it's said. Onomatopoeia happens to be my favorite word. Don't judge me. But here now, you can put onomatopoeia into the search bar there. It will give you the meaning. And also underneath, you can see here, which is quite a neat tool, how often it's been used over the years. So is it a term or a word that we really use anymore? So that's the dictionary definition aspect. Also, there's the compare aspect. So if you are wanting to compare, in this case, two landmarks, but it could be two other figures, here you get a knowledge panel bringing you not only which is the tallest, but also more information about that subject matter. So in this case, when it was built, who's the architect, and the height, and as well the pictures there. And then coming up right to date, now we're having things like if you're signed in and you're using Google Now, which is the card on the right, if you have an Android phone, if you've signed in with your details, then you can find a quicker way to get home using Google Maps. On the left-hand side, you can see your flight details, which you've booked through your Gmail account. This is what happens in the instance you search. I'm not going through them all here, but you can see them quite a lot. And this is instant now, and it's stuff that people kind of just almost forget is there in terms of the speed of the search. This, by the way, is a joke, spell check, spelled incorrectly, for the sharp eyes of you. But this is what happens when you search. And it's all pulling through to the knowledge graph. Now, we could do an entire session about the intricacies of what happens when you search, when you click. If you want to know more and you want to watch videos or get expert advice, then this is another really good website to go to. It's the google.com/inside search website. Explains in plain English or Italian or French the basic principles here. So I would recommend taking a look at that. There's also some really good advice from some of the people who are behind search and the engineering team there in Mountain View. Going back to some of the other frequently used tools, and this is stuff that I think people perhaps don't necessarily know and don't use as much as perhaps they could. If you really want to do quicker searches, then this is a good tool to start using. So searching with an exact phrase. So rather than just putting in just a bland term, if you put in exact quotations, it will bring through the speech, the moment, or the point of time that was said. This is an example which I think kind of perhaps not so newsy, as we're talking about salsa recipes, but this gives you a really good example. If you're looking on Google for, say, details about a news story you're covering, what about the bad weather story? What about storms? If you want to look for storms, but you don't want to feature storms that aren't from the UK, or you don't want to feature storms that were in 1998, then this is a good tool. So you'd put in here, in this case, storms minus 1998, and that will then filter what you're seeing, so you're not having to wade through loads and loads of irrelevant stuff that you know you're going to find, but don't necessarily need to. In this case, someone wants to find a salsa recipe without tomatoes, therefore they're going to get all that stuff coming through. All of this is kind of in one page, rather than going through individually. You can do this in one look. This is the Google Advanced Search page, which again, you can go through region, or you can go through bit by bit and put in here language, region, when a piece of content was uploaded. You can also put in file type. So if you're looking for a particular kind of file or a particular JPEG or whatever, you can also specify in there, and that will have the detail. The advanced search is localized in languages wherever you're using Google. So this is just the English one, obviously, but a really useful tool, again, just to get to those results quicker and to give you richer, more useful information. Let's go on now to Google Image Search, which again is a neat tool that I think a lot of people think they use, but I think there's perhaps not used as frequently as maybe you could. Who's seen the program MTV Catfish? Yeah, a couple. So you'll be familiar with Google Images. It's a very popular way of back tracing where images have come from. We'll look at that as well. But this is the basic tool. So if I put in again Perugia, this is what comes up. Again, we've got categories at the top, things to do, a map of Perugia, details of local areas, of course, football clubs in there as well. And also, as you can see, the landscape of Perugia. At the top, though, what many people don't see is that button that says Search Tools. And there you can go in and refine your image search, just as you would a word search. So in this case, let's go through what we can find. If you're someone who's blogging, or you're running your own website, or if you're indeed writing for a publisher, and you want to be careful about the images you can use, i.e. for copyright reasons, and this is a really good tool to look at as well, you can search for images that have or have not got licensing deals attached to them. So in this case, you can find images which are copyrighted by other people which you shouldn't be using. So you can filter it by that. So filter it by the owner and the license. If you're doing a rather moody piece and the images are not quite appropriate, but you want a black and white one, or more usefully, again, going back to thinking about natural events, a time-specific image, then there's a tool in there where you can literally, as you can see here, put in dates. You can be as specific as you want to be, basically. You'll obviously see there'll be less data and less images that come up, but it's another good tool to find pictures and images. Another thing you can do when you go through onto images is when you click on them, many of you will have seen this before, sort of a black wall with lots of different images that look very similar. What this is doing is it's collating images that look like that. It recognizes in the algorithm. And here you can see Perugia, which is from Wikipedia. And if I, as someone looking for images similar to this, or I want to find something that's taken maybe of a different time, but of that landmark. I can go and search by image. So underneath where it says Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, underneath it has search by image. So here you can see lots of different versions of this photograph. Or indeed, if you get this sent to you on an email saying, look at this is happening where I'm living, you can maybe try and identify where that image is by using search by image. So for example, a landmark will be recognized and it will perhaps tell you where that landmark is. Okay, so racing through now to that MTV Catfish feature. Who here's a journalist that gets images sent from members of the public frequently to them? No one? Great. Let's skip on. No. If you get images sent to you and you want to know who they're from, who owns that image, or perhaps what that image is of, then there's a really useful tool. You can grab that JPEG and literally drag it into the search bar, and it will do the best effort to try and identify what that image is of. So let's play around a bit. We were in Germany recently, and we spoke to a journalist there. Back in September, October last year, when the Scottish referendum was happening, a German newsroom was sent this image from a member of the public. And obviously, for those who know, the Scottish referendum was voted no, so it didn't happen. And the person who sent this in said, this has just happened on the streets of Glasgow. Riots are happening. Police are being called out. First, looking at it as someone from the UK, that is police uniform that you would see in the UK. It looks like a British street. I don't know, I can't tell if it's exactly where it's from. By using the Google search tool, dragging this JPEG into search, you can perhaps get a better idea of where this image actually came from. So in this case, as you can see, look at the top left, you can see in the search bar, there's a JPEG there. And automatically, there's something of slightly suspicious about this image in the fact that rather than being called Glasgow riots, it's actually called London riots. Bit geographically different. And you can start to see actually visually similar images there of what I think looks very familiar to the one that was sent into the newsroom. And of course, this gives you an idea that actually what we're seeing here is an image taken back in 2011, so 2 or 3 years earlier, showing a completely different scene, a completely different story, and nothing to do with the Scottish referendum, thankfully. So that's one use of Google image search. This is a tweet on the left-hand side. I've taken off the person who tweeted it, just to be nice. And some of you may have seen this before. So the tweet reads like this. It's from Chicago. I won't do the accent. Some Chicagoans won't drive away until spring. The no parking sign was put there for a reason. And underneath it, you see a car covered in ice and up against what could be the Great Lakes scene in Chicago. You need a bit of antifreeze to get into that car, maybe. It's looking a bit difficult. And this is a journalist who tweeted this, who said that this was happening. Who thinks that this was Chicago? So actually, as this boat shows, these photos were not taken in 2014, and they weren't taken in Chicago. It's actually Geneva in 2005. Again, if you were to drag this image into Google image search, it's one way, it's not a silver bullet, it's one way of starting to check that image. I saw on the program there are other people talking about verification over the next couple of days, so I think I've spoken to some of them before and they're really strong on that area. They have a lot better advice than I will, but this is a basic thing you could do quite quickly in your newsroom, quite quickly on your own. And it's important because for brands, for newsrooms, for journalists, whether you're freelance or you're working for a publisher, people will view how you use these images carefully. So if you're using them perhaps and you're not accrediting them properly, then it could come back against you in terms of what people perceive of you and your content. So it's something to watch out for. So there's a lot more you can do in searching for images, and there's a whole workshop we can go through again. Again, if you go to advanced search, that should come through with everything you need there. This is the advanced search page for the images. So similar again to what you saw for search. And again, you can go through and really refine what you're seeing here. So at the top, you can put in the image size. So say if you're looking for a picture of Perugia, but you need it to fit in a certain dimension on your CMS file, then here you can find it. You can also look for perhaps black and white, transparent. You can also time date as well. And again, there's a licensing thing on there as well. So search in terms of the basics, in terms of the workshops. You can find two more great links there. There's quite a long web address there, powersearchingwithgoogle.com and google.com/inside search. You'll see here two videos here, and that's a really good place to look if you want even more detail on some things we're talking about today. So that was search. I'm going to move on to Google Public Data, which is still on the google.co.uk or google.it websites. But this is something that certainly I, as a journalist, didn't know existed until I started working at Google. All the organizations on the right-hand side, so we've got the Status in Germany and the Economic Commission for Europe, Asian Development Bank, World Economic Forum, World Bank, all the way down to Statistics Iceland and Eurostat. These are some of the bodies that make their data publicly available. And the Google Public Data section of the website allows you to go in and see this data in a visual form. It's all data that they've provided and shared publicly. And again, it's a really useful tool that is there free for you to use now. Again, it's like going into a library, but rather than going to a library and taking the book away, the book is there for everyone to use at the same time. You can also, if you're a data person and you're creating your own data files, you can share them with public data and allow other people to use them. So I wanted to do a quick demonstration. I think the Wi-Fi might be against me, so I'm going to stick to some screen grabs instead. We're going to look at one example I found in the public data the other day, which was about broadband penetration. There was a report out today, actually, that says one country in the world has the highest percentage of broadband penetration. Anyone know what that was? Norway? No. This is Singapore. We're going to stick to Europe because we're not too bothered about Singapore today. We're going to look at a piece of data that was shared by Eurostat, and then we'll look at which country in Europe and the European Union was featured. So someone said Norway. Any other guesses for which country within the EU has the highest percentage of broadband penetration? Estonia? A Baltic country, perhaps? Sweden? It's like Eurovision now, isn't it? Any other countries? Finland, 12 points. So, of course, the answer is Denmark. Or is it the Netherlands? Who can tell from that screen grab? What I did, I went onto public data, saw some of the public files on there, clicked on the broadband penetration file, and it brings through the data that's been recorded by this organization, which was Eurostat. On the left-hand side, you can click on, click off some of the countries. So here I've clicked all of European Union, taken off some of the smaller countries. You could do, perhaps your own country and just track that. But here it's quite a good indication of, since around 2007, what countries are using the internet, or there's a stronger broadband penetration in each of those. So that's fine. You can embed this into any article you're writing about. So say if you're writing an article about internet across the EU, and you want to embed this as a visual feature in your article, then you can. There's just a button at the top by the cog which says embed, and you can shape it down to whatever size you want. But what I think is more useful perhaps is some of the more interactive features that again you can embed on your own website or blog. And this again is hidden underneath the cog. So you click on the cog and you can vary the data and see it in different visualizations. So for example, I've clicked on Italy and I want to tell the story of what broadband penetration there is in Italy compared with the rest of the EU. Italy's here, by the way. I can embed this as a bar chart, or I can also embed it as a bar chart with a play button. So I, as a reader, as a consumer of your article, can press play, and literally from 2007 to the end of the data, which in this case was 2014, I think, it literally animates. It's quite a neat trick for helping people understand your story. Another neat way of doing it is also to visualize it on a map. This is obviously a Google map. And again, you can see the bubbles growing and shrinking across Europe. This was 2004. So here, Denmark is still pretty strong. But you can see the story telling it itself with the visual data. So that's the public data. Now we're going to jump to Google Trends. Who's heard of Google Trends? Has anyone used it in any piece of content before? Yeah. So Google Trends, which you'll find is localized to your own language and to your own country, gives you an idea to a safe threshold of what people are searching for in one country. This is a screen grab from the United Kingdom, where I'm from, obviously. And you can see here the top trends for recent searches on Google and YouTube, and also a look back at what was trending over an entire year in 2014. You may see this in your press, wherever you are, that every year when companies like Google release information about what the most search is for, this allows you to do it more frequently and perhaps more locally as well. So here, this is on the weekend, so Grand National, which is a big horse race in the UK, was the most searched for, over 500,000 searches. Then Andy Murray, who got married in Scotland, 200,000 searches. And then underneath YouTube, the most searched for videos. Apparently we like chocolate cake more than banana cake in the UK. A big fact there. And also you can see some of the other things popping up around search interest in the TV program, The Game of Thrones. This is great, but why do you as journalists care about this, or how could you use this kind of tool? Well, Google Trends is changing, so you'll see if you go on mobile now, there's a lot more you can do than you could before, and we're constantly looking at updating this tool to see more ways that we can tell stories about people and what people are searching for. For example, this is what you as a journalist could do. This is publicly available now and for everyone to use on Google Trends. Here, I want to compare in Italy the searches for two football clubs, Juventus and AC Milan. I'm not a follower of either club, so that's safe for me to do it. Here we've got along the top there in 2015, Juventus seemed to be more popular in terms of search. Not so the case back in 2008, and these peaks may have something to do with matches, with results, with players coming and going. So you could, as a journalist, perhaps imply that there's a changing mood with Italian football with this. Or if you're doing a piece about Italian football and the brands behind Italian football, this could be quite a nice visualization to embed on your article, perhaps to reference the fact that actually more searches in Italy are for this club rather than that club now. This has changed. You'll think of your own examples in what area of news or journalism you cover that this could work. If you're a journalist within a certain area, so in this case someone who's working in international affairs, you can set up Google's search trend alerts as well. So this is what it would look like. So you go onto the Google Trends website, say that every time Ebola as an issue was trending, that you wanted to have an email alert sent to you. And this allows you to see a spike in searches. Quite useful if you're trying to track a story. One big story happening in the UK, again, and hopefully many of you will know already, that in a few weeks' time there's a general election. So journalists in the UK are using this tool as part of the election coverage. So again, with a story where you need something to visually give you a bit of help, this is a good tool. So in here I've put in some of the candidates for Prime Minister, and we're going back to March, so about a month ago, and you can see over time the searches for each of the political leaders. In red, back in sort of mid to late March, we saw Ed Miliband spiking. That was due to a TV performance. And then about a week later or so, all of them spiking because all of them took part in a debate. So again, quite pretty, but how's this being used by journalists and by newsrooms? This is one example from The Guardian. So here we've got two articles where both of them use Google Trends to tell a story about what people are searching for. These are all published and you'll be able to find them on the Guardian website at the moment. Some of the questions are interesting. These are the top 10 questions asked during an election leaders debate in the UK. So it was on television, prime time. Some people asking who's winning. Some people asking who they married to. And some people asking how tall are they? So all the big issues covered. You'll be able to think of how Google Trends as a tool could be useful for you in your coverage and your area. We've seen in the UK lots of really good examples. So we went to, we're looking at sport brands here in the UK. You'll see most of the 60 biggest brands in sport will be using Google Trends to tell the story about the matches over the weekend. So we saw the likes of Wayne Rooney sharing something recently where he was talking about how many people have been searching for him and his best goal ever, quite a lot. So hopefully you'll have an idea of what Google Trends is now and how it could be used in your coverage. Okay, so we're nearly at the end of the talk around the main tools before we get into maybe a discussion or some questions about how some of these tools could be used in our story. So let's go back to where we were at the beginning. Advanced search, image search, public data, and trends. We've raced through them. And I want now to, if you're up for it as a room, maybe have some ideas about how you could use some of these tools to tell the story of the bad weather. So, who's got some starter ideas? Who's going to help me out by starting? Yeah. Can I give the microphone around? Is that okay?
The first thing comes in mind is to search some images of the bad weather around the country, for instance.
Okay, so images around the country, thank you. Anyone else at the back? Don't be shy. So looking at images of the event so far that you can find on image search. Anything else? What about public data or trends?
Yes, I'm thinking about using trends. We can go back to the history to see if this event happened in the past before. Yeah. And see if it has something related to climate change or anything. You can alert the public.
Yeah. Cool. So you could use perhaps Google Trends to go back and see when was the last time people were searching for storms, for bad weather. Yeah.
Well, I have a question about actual coverage for like global topics. When I'm thinking about like globality, Google is represented in different countries, not similarly. For instance, in Russia, where I'm coming from, the Google is not so popular as in the US. So maybe this trends data will be a little bit inaccurate. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and people use Google in different ways around the country. You know, in Russia, there's obviously a strong other search brand, and there's strong search brands across Europe. I think this everything I've talked about today really is this thing. It's not a silver bullet. It won't solve, by using Google image search, won't solve the problem of verifying photos, but it's one tool to help you. So we're seeing in some countries they're using trends to tell the story a bit differently. Other social media forms have been doing trends in certain ways for a while. But I think what we're seeing now is that when you use trends to tell a story about what people are searching for, it can be more useful than just sheer numbers of, hashtags or whatever. Okay, so we've got so far image search and trends. Any other thoughts? Yeah? One just there.
Public data to track the amount of rainfall or wind velocity or something like that, and try and build it up into a more general weather report.
Yeah, exactly. So public data has everything from how much energy is produced to wind farms to how much governments are spending on certain aspects. So, for example, how much is spent on environmental controls in your country could be on there if it's a piece of public data. Okay, so I think, unless anyone else has any other ideas, let's go back to the screen if we can. Okay, so some of the other things I thought of this morning were, or yesterday, were date-specific searches. So if you want to find a piece of content or articles or images from a specific time, so when this storm happened, you could use advanced search to date specify when that content was written or composed or taken. So it really allows you to refine search. Remember that first long form we saw, the advanced search form. Image search, someone said it already, so verifying images. You can drag and drop images you get from UGC, from members of the public, or just ones that you happen to stumble across on other articles or blogs to see if it is really true or not. Public data, I think you mentioned it there. Statistics on funding for flood defences is one thought. What about searches for floods, storms? What about searches for how to protect my home? Perhaps Google Trends could offer some of that stuff. And also on Google Trends, you go to regions in some countries. So in the UK, for example, you can see searches for Scotland and England. In other parts of the world, you can see more sort of, depending on how the countries are governed, you can see city by city or state by state. So those are just some thoughts around that story of the bad weather. And hopefully you won't have to deal with bad weather soon. I know I will very soon when I go back to London. What I thought I'd do, we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to see if there's any time for any questions about search or advanced search. Let me just go through these again. So if you want to look in more detail at anything we've discussed today, google.com/mediatools has video links and full tutorials. If you've got a question about an article you're writing, or you want some help with a tool that's going to build into an article, then mediatools@google.com is a really good place to go. And then if you have any questions around Google or press questions, then you'll have your own press contacts in your local countries. But if anyone has any questions about anything we discussed today, then happy to take some questions. Yeah. Hello. No, there you go.
I teach Google Advanced Search in mostly right-to-left languages. So I'm teaching them, and sometimes it's not super clear when you use, regular script like file type, PDF you still use, but then if they want the search term to be in Arabic, like it seems depending on what language their system is set to, it gets all confused. So I don't know if there's like a guide, so if you're searching in Persian or you're searching in Arabic, what are the specific shortcuts? Because yeah, it seems like I said, sometimes it works mixing the two languages and sometimes it doesn't. So. Yeah,
that's a really good point actually. I don't know the answer to that if I'm really honest. I mean, when we kind of have questions where we are unsure, I think it's best if I direct you to the Media Tools at google.com website, and I'll make sure you get an answer on that, because again, in the countries I work in, it tends to be in English mainly, but that's a really good question. Any other questions? Hope I can answer. Yeah.
Just a quick question on if you go to the regular Google page and you type in a keyword to search for,
Yeah.
And the results come up, you get this, the options, like do you want to look for pictures or images, or you want to look for, what other options you have. The order of those seems to change, and I've never really figured out why. Could you, I don't know, can you explain what that means exactly? Like,
so it's a question about the layout and the structure of the Omnibox, as we call it. We make constant iterations to our products all the time. I think 500 plus in some instances to some of our products a year. So things like that are usually algorithmically focused, or they're from feedback from consumers or from other people that use the tools frequently. So I think, to the point about the products, they are constantly changing and updating, and as we see it, improving. So any changes like that you may notice, it's either because it's come from direct feedback, or we've noticed that people are using the tool in a certain way, and this could be a better way of using it. That could be an algorithmic thing as well. So it could be algorithmically, I don't know what you'll be searching for in that case, but it could be something that is reflecting the type of content you're looking for compared to the previous instance. Yeah.
Hi, if I'm looking for an image for a piece that's going to be displayed mainly in the States, and I want to disregard images that are found on other sites in the States, what would be the process for eliminating? Would that be the minus, but that is like a location or a source rather than a keyword?
Let's go and have a look. So if you go to, that's a good question. So if you want to basically find image content from a specific location, so you'd go to the advanced search for images, and hopefully, I think, number down, you can see region under type of image. So image size, you can specify the aspect ratio, again, fitting to whatever you're embedding the image into or pulling the image into, color, type of image, and region. So in there, if you click on that box, it should have either countries, or in some cases also have states as well. So that should help in terms of refining the...
But to eliminate a specific region?
Try doing the minus aspect on the image search. But I think region aspect there is probably the best way of doing it the other way around, if you see what I mean. So if you want to find content from a place, that's the place to go. Try doing it minus USA, and it should have it on there. Because I think most people are looking to find data from one location as opposed to taking it out. Okay, any last questions at all? No? Okay. Thank you very much. That was a quick run through, so a lot there. Thank you very much for your time. There'll be a session on YouTube tomorrow morning, and then also Google Maps on Friday. The details were on the slide there, but it's mediatools@google.com if you have any pressing questions, and hopefully I'll speak to you over the next couple of days or so. Thanks for your time. Thank you.